Getting married can be a nerve-wracking experience, especially if you have a number of people who you have to invite. It is the most important day of your life, after all, and you will want everything to be perfect. However, you may be overwhelmed by the amount of planning that you need to do. This book contains proven steps and strategies to planning your wedding. It starts with the wedding dates, the budget, and works through each stage of planning, suggesting how you can save money on wedding dresses, clothes for the bridal party, and wedding decorations. By keeping an eye on your budget as you go along, there is no reason why you shouldn't be able to save a substantial amount of money on your wedding. According to CNN, the average price of a wedding in the United States in 2014 was $30,000, and 15% of couples spent over $40,000 on their wedding. And that is before the price of the honeymoon was even considered. If you are on a tight budget, this may seem like an impossible dream. There is good news, though. If you budget carefully from the beginning, there is no reason why you can't pull off a spectacular wedding for a very reasonable sum. Just because you don't have a bottomless pit of money to fund your wedding doesn't mean that you can't have an amazing day that fulfills all your dreams. You will just need to plan ahead and cut costs where you can. Actually, a wedding that you have planned carefully from start to finish may be more memorable than a wedding that you have handed over to someone else to plan. Chapter 1. Wedding Planning. Setting the wedding date and guest numbers. So you've decided to get married. Congratulations! However, you may be wondering where to start. There is, after all, so much to be done. Before you can really start planning, you need to think about setting the wedding date and guest numbers. Wedding date. Before you can do much else, you need to set your wedding date. The date of your wedding will affect a lot of things, including your budget. If, for example, you want to get married on a public holiday, it is likely that the wedding venue will be more expensive. That is, even if you can reserve the venue of your choice. If you do want to choose a date that is likely to be popular with other brides and grooms, consider how soon it is that you want to get married. Many people get engaged and then want to be married within a year. However, if you want something special but don't want to pay exorbitant fees, you may find you can get a better deal if you put the wedding back a bit. Think about how you will feel about waiting 18 months or 2 years before you finally tie the knot. That way, you will be able to save a bit more money. And if you are good at crafts, you'll have more time to make your own wedding favors and wedding decorations. Another thing that you need to consider is the season. If you dream of an outdoor wedding, for example, the climate in your location of choice will be a factor. There's not much point in organizing an elegant outdoor wedding if it is likely to be blowing up a gale, pouring with rain, or in the middle of a blizzard. Be sensible, and if you aren't familiar with the location, find out as much about it as you can. At this stage, you may not have put too much thought into your wedding theme, but you should have an idea of your overall expectations. This may affect your wedding date. If you are the outdoorsy type, for example, a spring or summer wedding is going to be more sensible than a winter one. Then again, if you want an elegant indoor affair, the time of year isn't quite so important, and you can look at the cheapest times of the year. Guests are another factor to consider. If you have guests coming a long way, they may get held up if you choose a winter wedding, and there is substantial snowfall. You don't want to spend your wedding day worrying about whether your aunt and cousins are going to be able to make it or not. Talking about guests, it isn't only your calendar that you need to consider when deciding on a wedding date. Ask your close relatives and friends to take a look at their calendars too. Most people will rearrange prior engagements for a wedding. But if it is something that they can't rearrange, such as the wedding of another close friend or family member, or an operation, for example, you could end up getting married without one of the most important guests. Finally, you should consider your own calendar and that of your future husband. If you both have hectic jobs, there are likely to be times of the year when your jobs are less stressful. Think about how much time you're going to need to take off in order to prepare for the wedding, and then go on your honeymoon. It is likely to be at least a month, and then only if you have plenty of people who can help you. This may be particularly important if you run your own business and don't really have anyone you can rely on to hold the fort while you are away. Wedding guests. Although at this point you don't need to work out the number of guests down to the last person, you do need to have an idea of how many people you will be inviting. This will affect a lot of things, including, most importantly, the venues for the wedding ceremony and wedding reception. Sit down with your future spouse and close family members and start to draw up a basic list of who to invite. The most important people to consider are your close family and friends, especially those who will play a vital role on the day. They will obviously be parents, siblings, best man, bridesmaids, flower girls, page boys, and groomsmen. These are the people whose calendars you should check when it comes to setting a date. Think about the number of bridesmaids and groomsmen you want. Is it really necessary to have 10 just because you have so many nieces and nephews? In that case, you may want to consider just 1 or 2 close friends. When it comes to the more general wedding guests, consider the size of your families. If you both have a large family and a tight budget, you may want to just invite your most immediate family. After all, if you've never met the 5 second cousins on your mother's side, does it really matter if they come to your wedding or not? However, if you are going to invite one set of relatives, but not another, you need to consider whether you are going to cause offense or not. One way of working out whether to invite more distant family members is to consider whether there have been any weddings in their families and whether or not you were invited. If you weren't, then there's no problem. If they are offended, then they probably aren't worth worrying about. When it comes to friends, you will need to be strict too. You might want all your work colleagues and everyone you have ever known since high school to attend your wedding. But you need to draw the line somewhere. If you know that a particular friend is likely to be offended because he or she is not invited, say that you are having an intimate wedding and you hope he or she understands. It is your wedding after all, so don't be ruled by what other people will think. You may have single friends who you want to invite. Bear in mind, however, whether they feel comfortable coming on their own. If they don't know many of the other guests, you may want to suggest that they bring someone with them to keep them company. In any case, by the time of your wedding, they may have met someone and will feel awkward coming without him or her. Venue is another factor to consider. The more expensive the venue, the more you will want to cut down on the number of guests. You may not have reserved the venue at this stage, but you should at least have an idea of where you want to get married. Think about whether you'd rather pay a lot for an exclusive wedding venue but fewer guests, or have a cheaper venue with everyone you love around you on your big day. One way of cutting costs is to draw up a list of intimate friends and family for the wedding ceremony itself and the meal at the reception, but then invite more distant friends and family to the post-meal event. Again, that could mean offending a few people who believe they deserve to come to both events. But if they are genuine friends of yours, they should understand that you are confined by a tight budget. Finally, if you are worried about the number of people you feel you have to invite, you could always consider going away to get married. This could be a great option if you have always dreamed of a wedding in an exotic location. However, you'll need to look into what you can afford and whether your key guests will be able to afford it. If those key guests involve anyone elderly, you'll also need to consider whether they will be able to travel. Once you have decided on your wedding date and approximately how many guests you want to invite, you can start making the major decision of where you are going to get married. By this stage, you may not have a very good idea of how much you are going to spend. However, unless you have a bottomless pit of money, you are probably going to have to work to a tight budget. As a rule of thumb, the wedding reception will usually take up to 50% of your budget, so half the amount of money you have. And try to keep that figure when you are completing the next stage, booking your wedding ceremony and the venue for your wedding reception. Chapter 2. Wedding Planning. Venue for your wedding. Most weddings will consist of two parts: the wedding ceremony itself, followed by the wedding reception. That is likely to mean booking 2 locations, so you will need to put a lot of thought and effort into what you can afford and what suits you both as a couple. Make sure you both sit down and discuss openly what it is that you both want. This will avoid future clashes. Your wedding theme. The theme for your wedding could influence where you decide to hold your wedding. So it's a good idea to be clear right from the outset what you are looking for. A traditional and elegant wedding will probably need a professional venue to match it. On the other hand, if you want something less conventional, such as a rustic wedding or something small and intimate, you could opt for a backyard wedding or a wedding in a park. Knowing exactly what theme you want your wedding to take could save you an awful lot of money in the long run. So do your research. Ask other people's opinions and have an idea of the type of venue you want. Choosing a venue for your wedding ceremony. The venue for your wedding ceremony is likely to be the most important decision you make when it comes to your wedding. After all, that is where the majority of the photographs will be taken, and where your memories will linger long after the wedding jitters and the thrill of getting married have passed. Your local church. For some, the venue may be obvious. If you are religious, for example, you will almost certainly be getting married in your local church. To a certain extent, that makes things easier because you will already know the location intimately and will have a good idea of how you want it to look on the day when it comes to wedding decorations. Nevertheless, you will still need to talk to your officiating minister or priest to ensure that the venue is right for you. There will almost certainly be rules and regulations to follow, so you want to make sure that your expectations do not exceed what is allowed. You may, for example, be expected to use the church choir when you had set your mind on something a little more original, and you may be confined by what you can and can't do to decorate the church. You will also need to check availability. Just because you are local does not mean that you will be able to slot in your wedding ceremony whenever you want. You might also want to consider other church engagements for the day. If there are a lot of weddings, you may find you don't have much time for photographs afterwards because you're expected to move on. That could be an issue, particularly if the ceremony doesn't start on time because of late guests. Don't forget to ask about costs either. Church weddings aren't always free, and even if the ceremony itself is free, it may be appropriate to give a donation or a stipend. Additionally, there may be fees for musicians or the choir. A non-religious venue. If you aren't religious, you will want to consider an alternative venue. To a certain extent, this is great because you can get married in your back garden or a local park if you want. It also gives you the freedom of asking a friend or family member to perform the marriage ceremony. If they aren't already ordained, they can do so for free by enrolling online and then officiating at your service. You will, of course, need to trust that they will research exactly what they need to do on the day. However, if you want somewhere a bit more special or spacious than your back garden, then you will need to check out your options. You probably already have an idea of places where you would like to get married. Draw up a list and go visit each of them in turn. Bear in mind your approximate budget and the number of guests you want to invite. If you are looking farther afield than your home, a wedding in Provence, for example, the issues will obviously be more complicated and costly, and you may need to hire a wedding planner. Ideally, though, if you are on a budget, you won't go much further afield than your local area and will have limited choices. Make sure that both you and your future spouse agree. Other things you will want to consider when choosing a venue is the architecture, views, and if it is an indoor venue, the decor. You can decorate to a certain extent, but if you want the photos to come out well, you will need to be happy with the setting. Acoustics could also be important. You want your guests to be able to hear your vows and the background music. It is worth asking if there will be any other events nearby at the time of your ceremony. You don't want to be competing with other noise on your special day. Once you're happy with your venue, don't sit around too long before you book it. You don't want someone else to steal your ideal venue before you've reserved it. Otherwise, you may end up having to change the date you wanted. Choosing a venue for your wedding reception. Once you've booked the venue for your wedding ceremony, it's time to think about the wedding reception. This could be an easy decision if you are getting married in a church and there is a venue attached that you can hire. Alternatively, you or a family member may have a back garden that is large enough to house all the guests that you want. Again, though, you will need to consider your needs and whether you can afford what you want. There are a number of factors to consider when looking at wedding reception venues. Date. The first question, ideally over the phone before you even visit the venue, should be to check that the date you have in mind is available. If not, don't even bother going to look, unless you are prepared to undo all the hard work you have already done in booking the wedding ceremony venue. Maximum number of guests. One of your first questions should be about the maximum number of guests. If you have already set your heart on having 100 seated guests, but the venue can only squeeze in 80, then you know that you either have to drastically reduce your guest list, look for another venue, or consider a buffet dinner. Rules and regulations. Check what you can or can't do in the venue. For example, is rice or rose petal throwing allowed? Can you decorate freely, or are you restricted to working around the venue? Can you bring in outside caterers? Or do you have to use the venue's own caterers? What about music and alcohol? Are there sound restrictions after a certain hour? Cost. Ask for a careful breakdown of all costs involved. That should include the rental cost of the venue, food, drinks, decorations, entertainment, and anything else you can think of. You may decide to bring in outside caterers, decorations, or musicians, or you may decide to do it yourself. But it will be useful to have prices to compare. Then you can decide who offers the best deal and which vendors to go with. Sometimes venues will do a package deal if you decide to book everything through them. This may end up being the easiest option because then you won't need to liaise with lots of different people. Parking. Don't forget that a number of your guests will be in cars and that they will need to park. The last thing you want is for guests to have to park several blocks away and walk to the venue, especially ladies in high heels and tight skirts. Ask how many parking spaces will be available for guests, and if they can be sectioned off if the venue is open to non-wedding guests. Staff available. Another thing to check is that there are enough staff members available before and during the event to ensure that it goes as smoothly as possible. Ideally, you should have one contact person who is responsible for everything. He or she will be your main point of contact if you have any queries. However, you will still need to check that there will be enough staff available to direct and serve guests. You don't want people to be kept waiting on your big day. Accommodation. If you have guests coming from outside your local area, or you are getting married outside your local area, you may not be able to put them all up at home, and they may not be able to come and go in a single day. If there is accommodation available at the reception venue, this will be the most convenient place for them to stay. Check how much so that you can let your guests know. You may also want to consider if you are going to pay to put certain guests up. This all depends on your budget. If you can't afford it, be clear from the outset. Extra costs. There are often extra costs involved with wedding receptions that people forget about. For example, if you bring your own cake in, there may be a fee for cake cutting. The same goes for corkage fees if you bring in your own alcohol. Check on the acoustics as well. Are there costs for hiring microphones for the speeches? Don't rely on the venue staff to tell you. If they are experienced in arranging receptions, they ought to know, but they may forget or choose not to tell you until it is too late. Destination wedding. You may have decided that you and just a few friends and family members will be traveling elsewhere for your wedding. This could be a great way of making your wedding very special and intimate. However, if it is too far away, you may not be able to see the venue in advance. Even if you do, it will probably only be once or twice. That may not be an issue for you. But you will need to bear in mind that you will have to rely on the venue staff to arrange everything for you. If the personal touch is very important to you, this may not be a good idea. Talk things through with your future spouse and decide what is important for you. Of course, if you do opt for a destination wedding, you will need to find out what regulations there are for getting married outside of your home jurisdiction. That could influence your budget, so make sure you do your research in plenty of time. Booking the venues for your wedding ceremony and reception is an important part of planning for your wedding. After all, that is where a good chunk of your money is going to go. However, you still have a long way to go before you can rest on your laurels. Chapter 3: Wedding Planning: How to Set a Wedding Budget. Weddings can be very expensive. According to CNN, the average price of a wedding in the United States in 2014 was $30,000, and 15% of couples spent over $40,000 on their wedding. And that is before the price of the honeymoon was even considered. If you are on a tight budget, this may seem like an impossible dream. There is good news, though. If you budget carefully from the beginning, there is no reason why you can't pull off a spectacular wedding for a very reasonable sum. You should have already considered all the sources of funding that you have for the wedding, and you should already have an idea of how much those major expenses, such as the wedding reception, are going to cost. It is traditional for the bride's mother and father to cover at least some of the costs. But in this day and age, it is more likely that the bride and groom themselves will cover a lot of the event, and the groom's family may want to provide a sum of money. Don't consider the honeymoon at this point. If you find out that you will not have enough money for a honeymoon, you can ask wedding guests to provide a sum of money towards this. It is also becoming more and more common for married couples to honeymoon a few weeks or even months after the wedding to enable them to save up. Just because you don't have a bottomless pit of money to fund your wedding doesn't mean that you can't have an amazing day that fulfills all your dreams. You will just need to plan ahead and cut costs where you can. Actually, a wedding that you have planned carefully from start to finish may be more memorable than a wedding that you have handed over to someone else to plan. Separate bank account. One way to ensure that you keep your wedding money separate from everything else is to open a separate account that is just for wedding costs. Between you and your future spouse, work out how much you can save from each wage packet, and if friends and family choose to give you the money in advance, put that in there too. It will ensure that you don't overspend on other things and will keep you focused on your big day. How to work out costs. It is, of course, difficult to budget costs when you don't really know how much things cost. If you've never been married before or haven't helped anyone else with a wedding, you probably don't know just how expensive it can be. This is where you need to put in a lot of hard work. Fortunately, these days, the internet can be a great source of information. You can access a number of wedding magazines online that will give you an idea of the average price for each item on your wedding budget. Of course, you should bear in mind that costs will vary substantially from area to area. If you live in a city, for example, costs are likely to be much higher than if you live in more rural areas. If you haven't yet booked certain aspects of your wedding, that is fine. But at least ring around a few vendors and get some ideas of costs. The sooner you do so, the sooner you will be able to ensure that your overall budget is going to cover all your costs. Budget spreadsheet. Once you have a working amount, it is time to start breaking it down. Bear in mind that this is a working budget at this stage. Once you start contacting vendors, you may find that they quote a sum way over or even under your budgeted amount. Draw up an Excel spreadsheet with 4 columns titled as follows: relevant item, e.g., wedding dress, wedding decorations, amount available to spend, vendor estimate, actual amount. By this time, you should be able to factor in the estimate that you have been given by your chosen venues, as well as the number of guests. But you may need to make adjustments if you are way over your budget at this stage. Consider dropping the number of guests, or opting for a buffet or cocktail reception rather than a sit-down meal. It isn't too late at this stage to start making changes. Key budget items. Of course, each wedding will be unique, but to give you a basis upon which to start your budget, you should consider the following headings: wedding venue, reception venue, catering, beverages, cake, wedding dress, bridal makeup and hairdo, bridesmaids' dresses, groom and best man attire, wedding rings, wedding decorations, wedding favors, flowers for the wedding venue, floral centerpieces for reception, bride's bouquet, photography and videography, entertainment at reception, entertainment at wedding venue, accommodation for guests, if appropriate, accommodation for yourselves, if a destination wedding, transportation, invitations, place cards, and other stationery, officiant fees and church donation, gifts for bridesmaids and other members of the bridal party, wedding rehearsal, bridal shower, miscellaneous fees. Of course, you may find that you need to break down each heading even further. For example, flowers for the wedding venue could include corsages for guests and the bridal bouquet, as well as the floral decorations at both the wedding ceremony and reception site. However, the advantage of using an Excel spreadsheet is that you can add in new headings as necessary. Saving money. As you are going through your initial budget, this is a good time to consider where you can and can't make cuts, if necessary. For example, if you have a friend who is a great photographer, whether amateur or professional, consider asking him or her to take photos at the event as a gift. Someone who is a great flower arranger may be willing to do the wedding bouquet and corsages, which can save a lot of money on the flowers. You might even be able to make the wedding favors yourself. Many guests will appreciate taking home a memento of the wedding that you have made yourself. Call in favors where you can. One advantage of having your wedding in your local area is that you will have contacts with various vendors, and you may be able to haggle prices down. For example, if you have a local hairdresser, tell her that you would like her to do your hair on your big day, as well as that of close family members and bridesmaids. See if she will do you a deal on that. You may be able to get free manicures on top. The same goes for the wedding cake. The cost of cakes can be astronomical, but if you know the local cake maker, she may do you a deal. Alternatively, consider making the cake yourself, or asking a close friend or family member to make it. The ingredients and decorations will still cost a lot of money, but much less than they otherwise would have done. If you have a few bridesmaids, you could consider asking them to cover the cost of their gowns and accessories, Or you could offer to buy the gown, but ask them to provide the accessories. This is a great way of saving money. However, before you do so, consider whether you are going to cause any difficulties. Just because you have enough money to get married doesn't mean that your friends do, and you don't want to force them into declining their invitations because they can't cover the cost of the dress. Miscellaneous fees. Most importantly, do not forget to add in at least $1,000 in miscellaneous fees. If you are very careful, you may never need to use it, but it will give you peace of mind if you do have to find an extra sum of money for unexpected expenses. Constantly review your budget. Your budget isn't set in stone. You may not want to go over the overall figure that you have in mind. But if you find that something you want is a lot more expensive than you had planned for, you could make cuts in other areas. Make a point of sitting down at least once a month with your future spouse and going through your figures to make sure you are on budget. Now you have a working budget. You will be much more able to manage and maintain your expectations and those of your future husband and family. The last thing you want is to start your married life with a debt hanging over your head. Chapter 4. Choosing your bridesmaids, best man, groomsmen, flower girls, and page boys. You've probably had a good idea of who you want to invite to be your bridesmaids, best man, groomsmen, flower girls, and page boys. But if you haven't already invited them, you need to do so quickly. Not everyone likes the responsibility that comes with the position, and you don't want to end up running out of people to ask. Before you make the final decision, you and your future spouse should sit down and ensure that you are both on the same page. Choosing your bridesmaids. You'll need to consider the following factors. How many? Bear in mind that the more bridesmaids you have, the more money you are going to have to spend. Even if they agree to buy their own dresses, you will still need to factor in their food, drink, board, and bridesmaids' gifts. And you should really only ask your bridesmaids to pay for their own dresses if you know they are financially sound and will be willing to do so. Once you and your future spouse have come up with a list of possible bridesmaids, whittle them down as far as you can. You could go ahead with just one, particularly if you intend to invite flower girls as well. But you may be better off with 2. There really is no need to have 12 bridesmaids, although some people do have that many. You may think that you should decide who your bridesmaids are, and you may have the final say. However, the groom may have strong ideas if he doesn't like one of your friends, or if he has a sister or close female friend whom he really wants to include. According to the bridal website, The Knot, the basic rule of thumb is to have 1 bridesmaid and 1 groomsman per 50 guests. However, the final figure is up to you, provided it is within your budget. Family or friends. Whether you choose family or friends as your bridesmaids depends on your situation. If you have a sister or cousin to whom you are close, or you have 2 friends you've known since childhood, you may want to consider them. If your future spouse has a sister or close female friend, they may be obvious choices. Balance up the pros and cons of each and go for whatever option suits best, or will cause the least offense. Maid of honor. If you have one friend whom you would like to honor over and above the others, you could consider making her the maid of honor. This may mean that she has a few more duties than the other bridesmaids, but that is really up to you and her. The main thing is that you consider her to be a particularly special friend. Don't feel pressured into asking someone to be your maid of honor just because you were hers. Your expectations. Work out what it is that you want from your bridesmaids. You may want nothing more than their attendance at your special day and their place on the top table at the reception. Traditionally, however, the bridesmaids, and the matron of honor in particular, are there to help the bride in the run-up to the wedding and to be her right-hand women on the day of the wedding. This can involve a lot of work, including planning the bridal shower or bachelorette party. Before inviting anyone, consider whether the people you are considering can carry through with your wishes. If they are likely to be flaky and unreliable, there is little point in asking them in the first place. Where they live. The support bridesmaids can give you before the wedding will depend on where they live and what you expect of them. They won't be able to help with your bridal shower if they live in another country, for example. In that case, it is worth considering someone who is closer to home. Current situation. If you want your bridesmaid to be of assistance to you in the run-up to the wedding, you will need to consider their personal situation. The mother of a young baby, for example, may simply not have the time or energy to give you much more than moral support. Likewise, someone who has had a stressful career or home life may not be a good choice. They will probably be glad that you haven't asked them, or you could give them the option and say that you will understand if they decline, giving them a get-out clause. Let everyone know. Once you've invited the chosen few and they have accepted, let everyone know. That way, if there is anyone who is expecting to be asked, she will know that she isn't included. Hopefully, you will be able to smooth over any misunderstandings. Choosing the best man. Many brides leave the choice of best man to the groom, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. At the very least, both you and the groom should be happy with the choice of best man, and, for that matter, the bridesmaids and any other members of the immediate wedding party. There are certain characteristics that every best man should have. Reliability. The best man will need to support the groom through what can be a very stressful time. This needs to be someone who can jump to the occasion when needed and who will remain calm in the face of chaos. There may not be quite so much support needed before the wedding as the bridesmaids may need to provide, but it still needs to be someone who will be around when necessary and can take some of the pressure off the groom. If the groom's best friend is flaky and unlikely to help with wedding jitters, you may want to advise the groom to pick someone else. Good organizational skills. There is the bachelor's party to organize, as well as the seating of guests at the wedding ceremony and the reception, not to mention being responsible for the rings at the wedding ceremony. The best man, therefore, needs to have good organizational skills. Someone who is shy, can't remember things, and has poor time management is unlikely to make a good best man. If he has to constantly be reminded what he needs to do, it will add rather than alleviate stress. Good public speaking skills. The best man will be required to make a speech at the reception. This isn't something that everyone enjoys, particularly when young. At the same time, You don't want someone who is so cocky that he is likely to embarrass the bride and groom at the reception. Think about who would make a good public speaker. Ask if he is prepared to take on the role of best man and all its responsibilities, and you will hopefully have someone upon whom you can both rely. Again, let everyone know. Once you and the groom have made your decision, again, let everyone know. That way, if there are any male friends or relatives of the groom expecting to be asked, they will know the situation as soon as possible. Choosing your groomsmen. Not everyone wants to have groomsmen, and if the wedding is a relatively small one, it may not be necessary. However, if you have 50 guests or more, it may be useful to have groomsmen. Their primary responsibility is to direct and seat the guests, so they need to be reliable. It could be a useful role for a younger brother or cousin who isn't responsible enough to be a best man, but who wants to be involved. You will, however, need to consider the costs involved, such as hiring a suit for the groomsmen. Those on a tight budget could probably do without the added cost. Choosing flower girls and page boys. Many guests at weddings love to see children dressed up as flower girls and page boys. Whether you decide to invite flower girls and page boys really depends on how far your budget will stretch, unless someone else is paying for their clothes. Whether there are any obvious choices amongst close friends and family, and whether they are really going to add anything to the proceedings. If they are too little, they may need a lot of looking after. This duty should fall on the maid of honor or bridesmaids, but that can cause complications, especially if they don't know each other. The ultimate decision really is down to you and your overall vision for your wedding. There are so many aspects to planning and organizing a wedding that it will be of huge assistance if you have a couple of bridesmaids and a best man at least upon whom you can rely. If you are worried about causing offense by leaving people out, the best solution is to face up to them and explain why they haven't been invited. Those who love you and want the best for you will understand, especially if you are on a tight budget. Chapter 5. Choosing your wedding dress. Almost every young girl dreams of walking down the aisle on her big day in a beautiful dress. However, to turn that dream into reality isn't that straightforward. It may take days of trying on different gowns before you make your decision, and even then, changes may need to be made at a later date if you lose weight before the wedding. The key is to take your time and follow these tips. Do your research. Before you even go to a wedding dress shop, do some thorough research. You need to know what is out there, but you also need to have a good idea of what will suit you, both now and further down the line. One danger of going for the latest trend in wedding gowns is that it may look great when you first look at your wedding album. But as time goes by, it will look more and more unfashionable. You want to have your wedding pictures on display for years, not just a few months. If you're on a budget, you probably won't want to buy too many bridal magazines because they can be expensive. In that case, the internet is your friend. You will be able to find the most up-to-date designs and where you are likely to find the cheapest versions. You will also be able to look at more classic designs and what you think is most likely to suit you. Decide on your budget. You should already have a good idea of how much money you want your wedding dress to cost. You may need to be a little flexible here. Decide on the maximum that you can spend and make a conscious decision not to go any higher than that. It will help if you have done this before you even start looking. Then you can avoid trying on dresses that you can't afford. Consider the color. It isn't a given that you are going to choose a white or ivory. Of course, that is the traditional color for a wedding dress. But you can choose any color you want. You may decide that another color suits you more. There is nothing to stop you trying anything you like, including black or red. You will, however, need to let your guests know what color you are wearing, so that they avoid stealing your thunder. Unless you decide to go for a color-themed wedding, and you want your guests to match what you are wearing. Choose the silhouette. The thing that most people will notice about your wedding dress is the silhouette. You therefore need to ensure that your wedding dress suits your figure. It doesn't matter what shape or size you are, there will be something to suit you somewhere if you take your time. As a guideline, consider the following. Petite body type. If you are small and slender, you should avoid dresses that will swamp your figure. A ball gown is likely to be too much for you. Aim for a dress that will give you a bit of height while accentuating your figure. A sheath dress may suit your tiny shape perfectly, as should an A-line dress. A high-low hemline should make your legs look longer, or consider an empire waistline if you want your body as a whole to look long and lean. If you do want a little more body in your dress, try one that fits to the thigh and then flares out. Plus-size body type. If you are plus size, a ball gown may make you look too heavy, but an A-line dress can look fabulous. You may also want to accentuate your bust in a strapless dress or one with a low neckline. A basic sheath dress can also look great, especially if you have a waist and you don't have too many lumps and bumps that you can hide with draped material. If you are very busty and don't want to go strapless, you could try a dress with lace detail over the bodice, which will give you a little more modesty and should support your bust too. Athletic body type. If you are relatively long and lean, but don't have much of a waist, consider dresses that ruche at the waist or have something else there to add detail. Alternatively, look for a V neckline and a skirt that flares, either into a trumpet or mermaid style. Dresses with texture will also help you look curvier. An empire waistline may hide the fact that you don't have much of a waist, but may not suit you if you don't have much of a bust. Hourglass figure. If you have an hourglass figure, you want to make the most of your lovely waist. Go for an A-line style that whittles in at the waist and then flares out slightly over your thighs. A fitted sheath will also look good, provided that it doesn't skim your waist. Don't forget the neckline. The neckline of your dress is also important. Most of the photos will focus on your face and neck, so you need to ensure that the neckline is as suitable for you as possible. Flat-chested. If you don't have much to show off, you might want to consider the Sabrina or bateau style neckline, which follows the curve of your collarbone. This means that less of your décolletage is on offer. Other good necklines for the less well-endowed are the V-neck, which should skim your bust, or the jewel neckline, which is round and high, again hiding your décolletage. You will probably want to avoid a strapless dress because it will highlight the fact that you have no bust. Full-chested. If you have a bit more to offer, you could try an off-the-shoulder neckline, which will accentuate your bust, but will keep the tops of your arms covered. A sweetheart neckline, shaped like the top of a heart, will also look great on you, and you could protect your modesty with a lace filler. You could also go for a strapless neckline, provided you don't mind showing off your shoulders. Broad-shouldered. If you have broad shoulders, you probably won't want to accentuate them. You can avoid doing so by going for a halter neck or a high neckline. You could also try a scoop neck that is low cut to show off your décolletage. Don't go for an off-the-shoulder design, though, because your shoulders will be on full view. Go shopping early in the day. On the day that you decide to go shopping, don't go too late in the day. If you do, you will probably find that the shop assistants are jaded and won't give you the service that you deserve. If possible, go first thing on a Monday morning when they are fresh and won't mind how long you take. If you intend to go to several shops, consider going to each one on a different day. You need to be as fresh as the shop assistants when it comes to choosing your gown. You certainly don't want to end up choosing a dress simply because it's the nearest you can find to your vision. Try on as many dresses as you need. You should have done your research and have a good idea of what should suit you. However, that doesn't mean you are going to pick the right dress straight away. You may need to try on a great many before you even begin to work out what is going to suit you. Don't be put off by shop assistants who are trying to get rid of you. If you go early in the day, they should be more helpful. But even so, don't feel harassed into choosing a dress that you really don't like. If you're not happy with the service or with the dresses that you have seen, vote with your feet and walk out. There are plenty of other wedding dress vendors around. At the same time, be as polite as possible and try to get the best out of them. Wedding dress vendors generally have an excellent understanding of what suits each body type and may come up with suggestions that you haven't considered. Don't take an audience. You will probably want to take someone with you when you try on wedding dresses. After all, it is a big decision to make, and you will almost certainly want a second opinion from someone who knows and loves you. However, don't take your entire family and all the bridesmaids along with you. They will all have very different ideas about what looks best on you, and it could be confusing. Choose the person you take with you very carefully. It needs to be someone who knows you well and will be honest with you, but also someone who is prepared to spend hours waiting while you try on dress after dress. Cheap alternatives. If you've done your research and know that the dress of your dreams isn't going to be possible within your budget, then you don't need to panic just yet. There are other options. You could go for a second-hand dress. Most people's wedding dresses are worn just once and are as good as new. You could look online at sites such as eBay, but don't buy without trying it on first. You may even be able to find a beautiful vintage gown if that suits your style. Alternatively, see if there is someone local who can make the dress to your specifications. Make sure that the person in question has experience of making wedding dresses before you commit. You certainly don't want to find out that she doesn't have the experience you need after you have bought all the material and trimmings. However, this can be a very cost-effective way of getting the exact dress you want. Have regular fittings. If you're planning to lose weight before your wedding day, you will need to go for regular fittings to ensure that your dress fits well. This could particularly be an issue for a strapless gown. If you lose too much weight off your bust and don't have the dress adjusted, you could end up having to hitch it up all day long. Choosing your wedding dress is a vital part of your wedding preparation. The color and design may well influence other parts of your wedding plans, such as the bridesmaids' dresses, the groom's tucks, the flowers, and decorations. Chapter 6. Wedding Accessories for the Bride. Wedding accessories are almost as important as the wedding dress itself. They will accentuate what is already beautiful. However, with all the choices on the market, you may not know where to start. Fortunately, we have some tips that will help you to focus on what is necessary. Jewelry. Like your dress, no one can choose your jewelry for you. You need to be happy with what you are wearing. Don't feel pressured into wearing a major piece of jewelry just because it belonged to your mother or grandmother. There are a few things to consider when choosing your bridal jewelry. Be subtle. The main feature of your big day should be your dress, not your jewelry. All you really need is a necklace, if your neckline isn't too high, earrings, and possibly a bracelet. Be careful of the colors too. Just because you go for a white, ivory, or cream gown doesn't mean that you should go all out on colors for your jewelry. Choose a vivid color if you want, but don't go for several different colors unless you want to look like a Christmas tree. Match the color of the metal to your dress. When it comes to choosing the metal of your jewelry, you should consider that some metals work better depending on the shade of your wedding dress. If your gown is pure white, avoid bright gold jewelry. Platinum or even silver will look much better. If it is off-white, pale gold and pearl jewelry will blend in best. If the dress is ivory or even cream, you can go for a yellower shade of gold without it clashing. Be yourself. At the same time, whatever the conventions suggest, it is fine to be yourself on your wedding day. If you don't like subtle jewelry and you don't think it suits you, go for something a bit more flamboyant. However, instead of wearing a huge pair of earrings with matching necklace and bracelet, choose one flamboyant piece and make that the center of your bridal jewelry. If in doubt, ask friends and family for their advice. Don't spend a fortune. Unless it is a gift, don't spend a fortune on your wedding jewelry. If you do want to buy something precious, go for something that you will wear again. If you are only planning on wearing your jewelry once, you may be better off buying costume jewelry. Of course, if you have a family member who wants to give you an heirloom to wear, and you happen to like it, go for it. It can be your something borrowed. Bridal veils. Bridal veils are less popular than they once were, but can look spectacular if you choose the right one. There are a few things to consider. Length. There are varying veil lengths to choose from. It all depends on how much of an impact you want your veil to make. The shortest option is called the flyaway and basically stops just short of the shoulder. It's a flirty style that may suit a younger bride best. The elbow length and fingertip style are self-explanatory and look elegant without being too bothersome. The waltz falls between your knees and ankles, and, as its name suggests, is more user-friendly when dancing than the longer veils. The chapel is more or less floor length, while the cathedral involves a long train. The latter is obviously very challenging because it needs at least one bridesmaid to tend to it as you are walking down the aisle and during the photographs. However, some will love the romantic fairy tale look that it gives. How it's attached. You can choose to have your veil attached to a tiara, combs, pins, or barrettes, depending on what you want to do with the veil after the wedding ceremony. If you want to leave it in, you will need to ensure that it stays put and that it doesn't drag your hairstyle down. If you want to take it out, you can ensure it's attached to a hairpiece that you take out, or that is attached with hook and loop closures, which are easy to detach from your hairpiece when it's time to take it off. Fabric. Veils tend to be made out of tulle, but there are other choices if you want to be a bit different. You could consider silk or satin, or even lace, which could look amazing with a vintage dress. Color. You will obviously want the veil to match your dress. This won't be a problem because veil fabrics come in a wide range of colors. But you will need to have a swatch of your dress material with you when you choose your veil. You may be able to buy it from the shop at which you bought your dress. Embellishments. Just like your jewelry, you'll need to make sure that any embellishments on the veil don't take away from your dress. If you have a dress with a lot of embroidery or other embellishments, you will want to keep your veil as clean as possible, perhaps with just a few matching beads or stones around the edge. If your dress is simple, however, you can go all out on the veil. Common embellishments include sequins, beads, ribbon, embroidery, and even crystals. Headpieces. The headpiece you choose will depend on the length of your hair, whether or not you are wearing a veil, and how ornate you want it to be in comparison to your dress. The tiara is the most commonly known hairpiece, but there are a number of others that you can choose from. Rather than a tiara, which is a half circle worn on top of the head, you could go for a crown, which is a full circle, or a half crown, which is a half circle that is greater in height than a tiara. Decorated headbands look great with short styles. If your hair is longer, you may want to go for an updo, held up with barrettes, combs, or, if you have a veil, a back piece. There's a whole host of options, so decide what will best suit your budget and your dress. It is worth shopping online, although be aware that the color may not be exactly as it appears in photographs. Garters. Choosing a garter is perhaps one of the easiest things to do when it comes to preparing your wedding wardrobe. After all, no one needs to see your garter unless you want them to. So you can go all out and choose something that you really like. Garters are generally one size only. But if you are plus size and are concerned about the fit, make sure you try it before you buy it. Otherwise, you can probably buy online from the cheapest vendor. Style and color should also be considered. If you want something fun, you can go for polka dots, leather, or bejeweled. If you want something a little more classic, go for a shade that matches or blends with your dress. Alternatively, choose a blue one for your something blue. Lingerie. When it comes to wedding lingerie, you want to choose something sexy but comfortable. You will be wearing it for a good part of the day, so you don't want anything too constricting. If you do go for a basque, which can give great uplift and looks great with strapless dresses, make sure that you have it fitted properly. Ideally, you should go for seam-free lingerie in a neutral color so that it doesn't show through your dress or ruin the outline. If you have chosen a low-cut, low-back, or one-shoulder dress, you will need to pay particular attention to your bra. The last thing you need is for the straps to show. Seek advice from the vendor of your wedding dress, or take your wedding dress with you when buying your bra. If you can't find anything that's perfect, bide your time. Shoes. Like your lingerie, you need to take your time when buying a pair of wedding shoes. Some top tips include comfort. You'll be walking or standing in your shoes for quite some time, so you need to make sure they are as comfortable as possible. That doesn't mean you have to go for ballet flats, unless that is what appeals to you most. However, you do need to make sure that they fit properly and that you get the chance to wear them in before your big day. Right height. You'll need to consider the length of your dress when choosing your heel height. You may also want to consider the height of your spouse. If you are already his height or over, wearing high heels could make you look off balance. Stilettos probably aren't a good idea unless you really need to add height because they will make your feet ache and you may catch them on your dress. Match your dress. Unless you really want to make your shoes the focus of your wedding attire, choose a color that matches your dress. Wedding shoes come in a wide variety of colors, but even if you can't find an exact match, there's no need to worry. Most wedding vendors will provide a service to dye them to your specifications. Wedding wraps. If you're planning a summer wedding, you may not need to wear anything but your wedding dress. However, if the weather is chilly, a wrap may be just the thing to keep the chill off. Wedding wraps come in a variety of designs and colors, so you should be able to choose something to match your dress. For a subtle look, something lacy will look pretty. For a little more warmth, faux fur will look stylish. You could even go for a full-length cloak if you are getting married in sub-zero temperatures. Wedding gloves. Gloves aren't the first choice of every bride, but can add a touch of class, especially to a vintage style. The main issues to contemplate when choosing a pair of wedding gloves are size, length, and fabric. You are probably used to buying one-size-fits-all gloves, but for your wedding, you want to make sure that they are not too snug or too loose. Wedding glove fabric may be less stretchy than normal gloves. When it comes to length, wrist length or elbow length are most common and will suit most dresses. Although obviously long-sleeve dresses will call for shorter gloves. Fabric should be chosen to match your dress. Go for lace, satin, silk, or knitted fabrics, depending on your fashion statement. Bear in mind that when wearing gloves, you will need to remove them for the ring ceremony, as well as removed when eating and drinking. Long gloves are more difficult to remove, so this may be a consideration. Once you have chosen your wedding dress, you can relax and have some fun with choosing the bridal accessories to go with it. However, don't leave things until the last minute, or you might not find exactly what you want. And after all, the accessories are there to finish off your overall look. Chapter 7. Choosing the bridesmaids and flower girls' dresses. When setting up your budget and deciding on your wedding guests, you should have decided who you want to have as your bridesmaids and flower girls. Now it is time to think about what they are going to wear and how they will fit in with the overall theme for your wedding. Etiquette when choosing bridesmaids' dresses. You've seen the films about brides and bridesmaids falling out over the dresses that the brides choose. Of course, it is important to remember that it is your wedding and that you should have the ultimate say in choosing what your bridesmaids wear. At the same time, it really isn't worth falling out about, so you should be prepared to compromise. You may have a very set idea about what you want your bridesmaids to wear. However, consider that they are all different, and that what suits a slim brunette may not suit a curvy redhead or a top-heavy blonde. Bear in mind that they may want to wear their dresses again, particularly if they are not wealthy, so it will need to be something practical that suits them. Don't force your bridesmaids to wear something that they hate and can't wait to take off. It will be obvious in the photographs that they aren't happy. Whatever you do, don't go out and buy the dresses without asking for your bridesmaids' opinions. Take them with you if possible. If they live too far away, at least keep them informed at every stage of your hunt for the perfect dresses. Finally, reconsider the money factor. If it's been a few months since you've invited your bridesmaids and you had initially asked them to cover the cost of the dresses themselves, consider whether their financial situation has changed. Likewise, if your budget is stretched as tight as it can be, it may be time to ask your bridesmaids to consider paying something towards their dresses. A bridesmaid's dress costs around $100 to $300, which could make a big difference to your budget. The above is less of an issue when it comes to choosing flower girls' dresses. Flower girls are usually very young, so you can go all out on choosing something that matches your theme while making them look as cute as possible. If you want them to wear something that matches your dress, it would be good etiquette to offer to buy it for them. If you are happy for them to wear whatever is pretty, it is fine to ask for their parents to choose and fund the dresses. Considerations when choosing bridesmaids' dresses. There are probably as many choices for bridesmaids' dresses as there are for wedding dresses. Have an initial discussion with your bridesmaids about what you and they are hoping for in a bridesmaid's dress. If there is anything that they absolutely will not wear, respect their decision. It is your wedding, but it will be a lot more pleasant if you all are happy. Color. Every season will have a particular color that everyone thinks is perfect for bridesmaids' dresses. However, don't be colored by what is trendy if it doesn't suit your overall theme, or your bridesmaids don't like it. Your bridesmaids may well want a dress that they can wear to other events. In general, darker colors are more transferable. After all, you can't really wear a pastel-colored dress to a Christmas party. Another thing to consider is whether or not all your bridesmaids need to wear the same color. If you have a red and gold theme for your wedding, for example, you might suggest to your bridesmaids that half of them wear red and the other half wear gold. Alternatively, there is no reason why any of them have to wear the same color, although you would need to be happy with the way that the colors blended together. Different colored dresses could look very effective in the photographs, and you might be able to save money if they are not all cut from the same cloth. Practicality. Your bridesmaids are there to help you on your perfect day. That means that their dresses need to be practical. Bridesmaids' dresses are usually long, but don't have them designed so tight that your bridesmaids trip over their dresses to get to you. You also don't want them to look sexier than you do. Match. You want the bridesmaids' dresses to blend in with what you are wearing without taking your guests' eyes away from you. Ideally, bridesmaids' dresses should be relatively plain, both in pattern, design, and color, so that it is your dress that stands out. That also makes sense when you consider that your bridesmaids may want to wear the dress again. Fit. Your bridesmaids are unlikely to be all the same size and shape. That is why it is important to get them properly measured for their dresses and to ensure that there is time to adjust them if they cannot turn up for a fitting in person. A badly fitting dress looks cheap, and your bridesmaid will be aware that she is not looking at her best. Same style. Just as there is no need to have every dress in the same color, there is no need to have every dress in the same style. If you do go for one style, A-line skirts and empire waistlines tend to look good on everyone. However, if your bridesmaids are around for regular fittings, consider going for different styles so that what suits each one best is what they end up with. They will appreciate your thoughtfulness. How to choose flower girls' dresses. There isn't quite so much effort needed to choose flower girls' dresses. Traditionally, they would be made from the same material as the bride's dress, but that really isn't a major issue these days. The key thing is that the dresses the flower girls wear are comfortable and fit well. Ideally not full length, because small girls are likely to trip over anything too long. If you aren't worried about a perfect match, any relatively formal dress that suits the little girls will be just fine. How to save money on bridesmaids' dresses. If you're looking at saving money on your bridesmaids' dresses, whether you are buying them or not, there are a few things that you can consider. Go second-hand. It's not unusual to find second-hand bridesmaids' dresses. You may even find a whole set that can be adjusted according to your bridesmaids' sizes. Look online on sites such as eBay or shop in thrift stores. That may be particularly useful if you don't mind if your bridesmaids all wear the same dresses. Look at rental companies. It's quite usual for the bridegrooms and father of the bride's tux to come from a rental company, but people are generally less likely to consider renting the bridesmaids' dresses. Nevertheless, there are companies that specialize in renting out bridesmaids' dresses. The cost of the rental will obviously depend on the company and the designer of the dress, but for a day or two's rental, you can expect to spend no more than $150. Of course, this may not be a good idea if your bridesmaids are likely to overindulge and damage the dress. You don't want to be faced with a hefty bill because the dress is ruined. Try chain stores. Chain stores such as H&M and Charlotte Russe can have some very reasonable dresses suitable for bridesmaids, and they will cost a lot less than those you'll find in a wedding store. Even better, if your bridesmaids are in different locations, you can get them to go to their local store and try the dress on themselves to ensure that the size is right. Order online. Provided that you have the exact measurements of your bridesmaids, you could try ordering them online. Many chain stores have their own online sites, but you could also try discount stores and eBay. If you can get the dresses cheaply enough, and then they need a little adjustment, when your bridesmaids try them on, It probably won't cost very much to do so. Ask a friend or relative to make them. It may be a tall order if you have more than 2 bridesmaids, but it is worth asking anyone you know amongst your friends or family if they can make the dresses for you. Bridesmaids' dresses are nowhere near as complicated as a bridal gown, so someone with reasonable dressmaking skills should be able to make them easily. Alternatively, they may be able to make any adjustments needed to dresses that don't quite fit correctly and save you a bit of money there. Don't get too tied up with the way that your bridesmaids are going to look. You want them to look smart and well turned out. But if they aren't wearing the latest fashion or the latest designs, it really doesn't matter. Save your time and energy for ensuring that you look the best that you possibly can. Chapter 8. Accessories for Bridesmaids and Flower Girls. Once the bridesmaids' and flower girls' dresses are sorted, it is time to ensure that they have the accessories to match. In general, the bridesmaids will pay for their accessories themselves, but of course you as a bride will want to make sure that they blend well together and don't outshine you. Flower girls won't need as much in the way of accessories, apart from perhaps shoes and a basket for rose petals. Bridesmaids' accessories. Jewelry. The jewelry your bridesmaids wear is really dependent on their dresses and on what you are wearing. If they have a dress with a high neckline, for example, they may not need to wear necklaces. Otherwise, a necklace and earrings is probably the best way to go. That doesn't mean that each bridesmaid needs to wear the same jewelry. In fact, if they are all wearing the same dresses, they might like the idea of wearing different jewelry. And if they are all wearing different dresses, they may need to wear different jewelry. If your bridesmaids do decide to wear necklaces, you should ensure that they choose a style of necklace that fits well with their neckline. For example, a pendant might look great with a sweetheart or strapless neckline, whereas a high neckline might suit a long necklace of beads. You will also need to consider what you are wearing. If you have a low neckline with a pearl choker, you might not want them to wear pearls at all, or you may want them to wear single strand of pearls. Whether they wear bracelets or not is really up to you and them. It could look lovely if those without necklaces opt for bracelets, and those who wear necklaces go without. Then they are not swimming in jewelry and won't overawe what you are wearing. If you do decide that you want your bridesmaids to all wear the same jewelry, you might want to consider giving them a gift of jewelry before rather than after the event, with the proviso that they wear it on your big day. If you are planning to let your bridesmaids sort their own jewelry out, and you have strong feelings about what they should or shouldn't wear, let them know in plenty of time. You may not want a bridesmaid with a nose ring or ankle chain, for example. Don't surprise them by asking them to remove their jewelry at the last minute. At the very least, when it comes to jewelry, you should ask your bridesmaids to keep you informed about what they intend to wear. You may think the people in question have the best possible taste, but you don't want to be surprised on the day of your wedding. Shoes. If you or your bridesmaids have had to pay out for a dress, you may not want to spend a great deal on shoes. At the same time, you want them to look as smart as possible, and ideally, they should match in color. If they are all wearing the same dresses, or at least the same color, you might want them to wear the same shoes. But that really depends on whether they can all get the same shoes. If they are wearing long dresses, their shoes may hardly be seen anyway. The weather may also be a factor. If you are getting married in the late spring, summer, or early fall, strappy sandals will look great. If you go for a neutral color, such as nude or gold, they can look classy and match any color of dress. If the wedding is during the colder times of year, simple pumps with a heel that can be dyed to match the dresses may be an option. On the whole, it is better to opt for shoes with a heel, provided it isn't too high, because this will make your bridesmaids look taller and leggier. They will probably feel better too. A classic style of shoe is probably the best option, unless a more flamboyant pair fits in with your wedding theme. You may want to keep an eye on your bridesmaid's choice of shoes, simply because you don't want them to turn up in a pair of Manolo Blahniks that are far classier than your own. You also don't want one bridesmaid to stand out over another because of her choice of shoes. Purses. Bridesmaids will want a purse with them to keep necessities such as money, makeup, car keys, a camera, and possibly some of your own necessities. The style should be left up to them, because they probably won't have them as they walk down the aisle behind you anyway. Evening purses will be most suitable. Clutch purses look great, but can be hard to handle, whereas a small bag with a strap can be worn hands-free. Hair accessories. You will want to keep an eye on your bridesmaids' hair accessories because you want them to complement your own, not duplicate or take over from them. If you are wearing accessories with a particular theme, such as butterflies or crystal beads, you may want your bridesmaids to wear something similar, albeit on a lesser scale. What they wear will depend on the length of their hair. Short-haired bridesmaids will look great with a simple hair slide or hair band. Longer-haired bridesmaids can sweep their hair up with a barrette or combs. Wraps. If you're getting married in warm weather, your bridesmaids probably won't need anything but their dresses. If, however, it is cold, you might want to think about wraps. Ideally, this should complement both their dresses and whatever you are wearing. A lacy knitted bolero jacket or a faux fur shrug will look classy and will keep the chills off for the duration of the wedding ceremony. Flower girls' accessories. You don't want to load your flower girls up with accessories. Their innocence and cuteness is what should shine through, not the jangle of their accessories. However, there are a few basics that you may want to consider. Shoes. You may not need to buy shoes that match the particular dresses your flower girls are wearing, unless they are wearing dresses of the same fabric as your dress. In that case, you might want to ensure that they have matching shoes too. The best choice of shoes for flower girls is simple pumps with a strap, or sandals if it is very hot. If you don't want the shoes to be filthy before the end of the wedding ceremony, it is worth avoiding pure white or even cream shoes. Little girls might enjoy having their shoes blinged up with a few crystal beads or sequins. Basket. If you want your flower girls to scatter petals as they walk down the aisle, look out for some pretty baskets for them to carry. Bear in mind their size. A 3-year-old will not be able to carry the same size basket as an 8-year-old. You can buy baskets from a wide range of online retailers, such as eBay and Walmart, as well as specialist wedding retailers. Don't spend a great deal of money. A beautiful satin basket may look adorable, but not much more than a cheaper version. And in the hands of children, they aren't likely to last very long. Hair accessories. Flower girls will look adorable with cute hair accessories in their hair, but don't go overboard. Just one barrette or a couple of glittery hair clips is all that they need. Younger girls will look particularly adorable with a headband, perhaps with a flower or two adorning it. Sashes. If your bridesmaids are wearing white or cream dresses, a sash of the same fabric as your bridesmaid dresses will add a splash of color and will ensure that they all blend in together. It's a simple touch that won't cost much money, but can be very effective. If, however, you can't get hold of the same fabric, don't try to match it up with something inferior. It won't look right. Silk flowers. Finally, if your flower girls aren't carrying a basket of petals, you might want them to carry a small bouquet of silk flowers instead. Silk flowers can look beautiful if you avoid buying the cheapest type. They will also last a lot longer than fresh flowers and are likely to be cheaper. Accessories for bridesmaids and flower girls may not be at the top of your list of priorities. You may not even need to buy them yourself. However, if you stay informed, you can ensure that they complement the overall beauty of your wedding rather than detract from it. Chapter 9. Wedding Attire and Accessories for the Groom. In general, the groom's wedding attire is much easier to choose than the bride's. After all, there are only so many suits you can try on, and the colors are usually relegated to black, brown, navy, and gray. However, there are some important aspects that need to be considered, ideally in conjunction with you as the bride-to-be. You may feel like stepping in and deciding on the attire for the entire wedding party, but it is still important that the groom, and to a lesser extent, the rest of the wedding party, is happy with what is chosen. Wedding attire for the groom. The groom's wedding outfit may not be settled quite as far in advance as yours, but it should not be left until the last minute, because you want it to blend in. As soon as you have decided on your wedding gown, you should start discussing the options with your future spouse. There are a few important things upon which to reflect. Formal, semi-formal, or informal. Whether the groom opts for the formal, semi-formal, or informal route depends largely on your overall conception of the event. Formal attire will usually consist of top hat and tails, or a morning coat, which has tails to knee length. This can look very classy, but can also be very stiff and ceremonial, which may not fit the overall theme of the wedding. A slightly less formal option is a tuxedo. A tuxedo differs from a suit in that it has satin on the lapels, the pocket trim, and buttons, as well as a satin strip down the outside leg of the trousers. It will usually be worn with a bow tie and waistcoat. A semi-formal option is a smart suit, which would usually be worn with a tie and waistcoat. This is a more popular preference in this day and age because it is more likely to be worn again after the wedding. Becoming more popular these days is more informal wedding attire. This will depend on the setting. Usually, a smart blazer and trousers would do for the wedding ceremony and reception. But if it is a beach wedding or something else outdoorsy, a linen suit or even khaki shorts and flip-flops may be the way to go. If you are concerned that your future spouse is opting for something too informal, say so before it is too late. Then you still have time to negotiate. As with your wedding gown, it is generally a good idea to avoid anything too fashionable, simply because it will make the wedding photos look out of date very quickly. Instead, the groom should opt for something that is timeless. Then there is the added advantage that if the suit is bought and not rented, he can wear it over and over again. To rent or to buy. Male members of the wedding party often rent suits because they figure that they will only be wearing them for one day. This can work out cheaper than buying, especially when the wedding party as a whole is taken into consideration. However, care needs to be taken when renting a suit because it may not fit properly and can sometimes look cheap. There is the added disadvantage that it may be out of date. Buying an off-the-peg suit is another option. The main advantage to that is, of course, that the groom then has the suit to use for other events, particularly if it is not too formal. Again, though, an off-the-peg suit may not fit properly and could therefore look out of place. For the best-fitting suit, tailor-made is definitely the way to go. The fabric and color are then the groom's choice, and there is no doubt that a well-fitting suit can make a man look fantastic. However, this is a more expensive preference and may not suit your budget. And don't forget that if the suit is made too far in advance, and then the groom loses or gains weight, alterations will need to be made. Color and fabric. Unless black tie evening wear is the theme of the wedding, there is no need for the groom's wedding attire to be black. Navy, gray, brown, and pinstripe are all possibilities and can still look very smart. The fabric will largely depend on the season. A wool-based fabric may be preferable in the winter, whereas something lighter for the summer may be needed. In the case of an outdoor wedding in a hot climate, linen or cotton may be most suitable. Coordinating with the bride. You will probably consider it important that the groom's attire coordinates with the rest of the bridal party. You could request that the color of the waistcoat or tie matches that of the bridesmaids' dresses. At the very least, you will probably want the groom to be in formal attire if that is what you have chosen. On the other hand, if it is a theme wedding or a wedding that involves an activity, such as scuba diving or golf, you should both be in informal attire. Some personal style. You should allow the groom to have a little fun with his outfit if he so chooses. This could be in the form of a colorful pair of socks or a pair of fun cufflinks. Being too strict over the little things is unlikely to bode well for your future relationship. Shape and size. Although there aren't as many suit choices for body shape and size as there are dress choices for women, it is still advisable for the groom to consider how the suit will hang on him. Tall men, for example, should avoid double-breasted suits because they can look too imposing. If weight is an issue, a suit with a lower button than usual will help offset the extra weight. Accessories for the groom. After considering the overwhelming array of accessories available for you and the bridesmaids, there won't seem as many for the groom. However, there are still a few accessories that the groom may choose to wear. Waistcoat. Many grooms choose to wear a waistcoat with their suit. This may be in the same fabric as the suit, or it may be in a contrasting color, perhaps to match that of the bridesmaids' dresses, or to fit in with the color theme of the wedding. A waistcoat can look great at the reception when it is time to dress down a little by taking off the suit jacket. It still looks smart, but it's cooler and less cumbersome. Cummerbund. A cummerbund is often worn with a tuxedo in place of a waistcoat. It is simply a sash that is worn across the top of the trousers, often in the same color as the bridesmaids' dresses. It can look very smart and adds a splash of color to what is otherwise a rather colorless outfit. Top hat. Top hats are sometimes worn with formal dress suits and are probably more popular with brides than they are with bridegrooms. They will usually be rented rather than bought. Your best man, groomsman, and father of the bride may also want to wear top hats. Tie versus bow tie. The choice of a tie versus a bow tie really depends on the suit chosen. It is usual practice for grooms in tuxes to wear a bow tie. However, an ordinary tie may look classy with any other suit. It can be in a plain color such as black, or in a bright color to match the bridesmaids. Alternatively, this is somewhere the groom can introduce a little of his personality in the form of a fun tie. However, this should be discussed with you in advance to avoid an unwanted surprise on the big day. Cufflinks. Whether men choose to wear jewelry on their wedding day is largely a moot point because it is unlikely to be seen. However, cufflinks can look great on a shirt and can inject a little fun into the proceedings. You may choose to gift your man a set of cufflinks on the wedding day. Shoes. Shoes for the groom should be a relatively easy choice because black or possibly brown dress shoes are the way to go, unless it is a more informal wedding, in which case anything could go. Ideally, the shoes should be new, but worn in. New shoes will immediately look smart, but may pinch the feet if not worn in first. The groom may feel that what he wears is unimportant compared to that of the bride. After all, few little boys dream of walking down the aisle in the way that little girls do. However, it is still important that he pays attention to what he is wearing, because it can make or break the day for you. It is also, however, important that he feels comfortable in what he is wearing. Forcing him to wear a top hat and tails when he feels awkward will be obvious in the photos, and it is unlikely that you will want that. Chapter 10. Wedding attire and accessories for the best man, groomsman, father of the bride, and page boys. As the bride, you will probably want to have a say in what the male members of the bridal party wear. But you will, of course, need to negotiate with the groom, who may have his own ideas. Be prepared to listen to what he has to say. Once you have decided what he is going to wear, you can then move on to the best man, the groomsman, your father, and the page boys, if you have any. Wedding attire for the best man. Traditionally, the best man, and possibly the groomsman, will wear the same outfit as the groom. However, as a couple, you may decide that you don't want the best man to wear the same thing. When coming to your conclusion, it is worth considering certain factors. Size and shape of the best man. If your best man is a completely different shape from the groom, he may simply not look right in the same outfit and will not feel comfortable either. In that case, he may want to wear something in which he feels more comfortable. You will want to make sure that he fits the general style of the wedding, but there is no reason why he can't look great if he wears something a little different. Personal style. Your husband and the best man are probably very close, but it doesn't mean they have the same style. If you decide the groom is to wear a top hat and tails, but the best man knows he will look out of place to everyone who knows him, you might want to let him do so. In any case, there may be a few guests who don't know the best man or even the groom, so allowing them to dress differently will ensure that no one mistakes one for the other. Theme of the wedding. It may be traditional for the groom and best man to be dressed in a similar fashion, but if you aren't having a traditional wedding, you can be a lot more relaxed about what the best man wears. After all, if your husband-to-be is wearing shorts or a scuba diving outfit to the wedding ceremony, he probably doesn't want the best man to be wearing exactly the same thing. Cost. If you're on a really tight budget, hiring or buying identical suits may cost more than you want to spend. In that case, allowing the best man to wear something of his choice will be more cost-effective. Just make sure that you are happy with his choice. You don't want him turning up in a tracksuit when you are trying to have a classic and elegant wedding. Wedding attire for the father of the bride. Again, at a traditional wedding, the father of the bride would wear something similar to the groom and best man. As your father, he will want to look the part. After all, he will be the center of attention in photographs and during the speech at the reception, and he won't want to embarrass you. However, if you're a bit more relaxed about whether he wears an identical outfit to the groom and best man, he has a lot more options. A smart suit will look great if it is a relatively formal event. Black, charcoal, and navy are the most suitable colors for winter, whereas brown or beige may be more suitable. If the event is more informal, he has even more choices. He could even wear flip-flops and khaki shorts to a beach wedding, if it fits in with your theme. Wedding attire for the groomsmen. If you have groomsmen, their primary role will be to guide people to their seats for the wedding ceremony and the reception, if it involves a sit-down meal. They may also be required to direct guests from the car park to the venue. As a result, it would be helpful if they wore something that identified them, perhaps a smart suit or something more informal in a matching color, if not matching styles. However, they don't need to wear exactly the same thing as the groom unless you want them to. If they are much younger than the groom, they may not look right. Wedding attire for the page boys. If you decide to have page boys, they would traditionally wear a smaller version of what the groom and the rest of the male bridal party would wear. It really isn't necessary, though, especially if they will need something to be specially made. Instead, you could ask their parents to dress them in something smart, or that fits the overall theme, and thereby save some money. It is worth remembering that if the outfit is too formal, small boys may refuse to wear it, and, even if they do acquiesce, it could well end up getting filthy before the photos are taken. Be sensible and don't force the issue just for the sake of tradition. Accessories. When it comes to accessories, anything goes, unless you want the entire male wedding party to be carbon copies of each other. If they are all wearing similar outfits, it might be a good idea to let them all wear different accessories, and thereby differentiate between them. The following accessories are the most common and will allow the men folks to make their own mark on their outfits. Waistcoat. If you're going down the traditional route with waistcoats, it doesn't mean that the men all have to wear the same color waistcoats. You could choose a brightly colored waistcoat for the groom, whereas the others all have waistcoats of the same color as their suits. Alternatively, they could all wear slightly different waistcoats, or some could wear them while others don't. Top hat. Another very traditional choice. If the groom is wearing a top hat, you could decide that the best man and your father wear matching hats. Or you could make the groom stand out by being the only one to wear a hat. If you're getting married in the heat of the summer, you might want to avoid top hats completely. because they can make the wearer sweat profusely. Not a good look when it comes to the photographs. Tie. Ties are another way to let the wearer make their own mark on the proceedings. If you aren't too worried about conformity, you could let them all wear their own choice in ties. Even if one or two of them go for crazy ties that you wouldn't have personally chosen, they won't really be seen until people get very close up. Suspenders. Suspenders are a popular choice of accessory for the male bridal party at the moment. They won't be seen while the men are wearing suit jackets, but they add a touch of class when the jackets come off. Just make sure that they match the suit color and aren't too wide. Thin and slinky is the way to go. Shoes. Dress shoes in black or brown are generally appropriate at the wedding, unless it is a very informal affair, in which case anything can be worn. Dress shoes aren't going to be suitable on a beach or most types of outdoor terrain. Ring pillow. If you're having page boys and want to follow the traditional route of giving them the duty of ring bearer, you'll need to get a ring pillow, which is usually a velvet cushion. This doesn't have to be anything expensive. However, you'll want to ensure that the ring or rings isn't going to disappear halfway down the aisle. To avoid this, you could attach the ring lightly with thread, provided it could easily be removed once it reaches the groom. Alternatively, you could have a fake ring that the groom can then replace at the other end. In general, all eyes will be on you as the bride and your bridesmaids, so you don't need to sweat the small stuff with the male side of the bridal party. At the same time, make sure that you're happy with what they're all wearing. You want to be proud of them all on your wedding day. Chapter 11. Wedding attire and accessories for the mother of the bride and the mother of the groom. Your mother has probably been waiting for years for you to tie the knot and will want to look her very best on your special day, as will your future mother-in-law. She will probably be paying for her outfit herself, but she will probably want you to have an input into what she wears. And especially if you have a set theme in mind, you will want to make sure that it fits in with your plans. You will also want her to look as photogenic as possible, because she will be in a lot of the wedding photos. If your mother is helping to pay for your wedding, she may not have a lot of money to spend on her outfit, especially if she needs all the accessories to match. Luckily, there are plenty of ways that she can look outstanding without breaking the bank. Wedding outfit for the mother of the bride and mother of the groom. When looking for the perfect outfit, it is common courtesy for the mothers of the happy couple to liaise with each other on certain points and to consider the feelings of you as the bride. Color. The color of the wedding outfit for the mothers of the bride and groom is one of the most important aspects to consider. You may well be wearing a wedding gown in a neutral color, but if you have a color theme to the wedding and your bridesmaids are wearing a particular color, you don't want the mothers to wear something that is going to clash. For example, if the color theme is a pastel shade, they probably don't want to choose an outfit in orange or black. Don't be tempted to suggest your mother wears exactly the same shade as the bridesmaids, if they are all wearing the same color, unless you have a monochrome theme. Your mother is a special member of the wedding party and should stand out, not blend in. In addition, that will preclude your future mother-in-law from wearing the same shade and may make her feel left out. After all, she is just as special to your future spouse as your mother is to you. The color chosen should suit the skin tone. If your mother is pale, she may suit a lighter shade of her chosen color. Whereas if the mother of the groom is darker skinned, she may look best in a more vibrant color. Just because you and the bridesmaids are wearing one particular shade doesn't mean that the mothers have to wear a single shade. They could opt for a pattern that will fit in beautifully. For example, if the bridesmaids are in peach, a pattern that has some peach in it could look beautiful. If you find it is impossible to choose a color that suits either woman and doesn't clash with the overall theme, a neutral shade may be best. Black is generally considered to be the wrong color to wear for a wedding, unless black and white is the theme, but that is really up to you. In any case, there are other neutral shades that can look classy, such as beige or a silver gray. However, steer clear of white or cream, unless you are wearing a completely different color. Personal style. It is also important to consider personal style. If your mother is a twin set and pearls lady, she probably isn't going to feel comfortable wearing a short skirt, no matter how good her legs are. She may prefer a two-piece suit in a one shade with a pretty floral blouse underneath. Nor should she feel pressured into wearing a cocktail dress if that is what the mother of the groom is planning to wear. However, it is probably best to avoid a full-length ball gown, because that could detract from what the bride is wearing. Shape and size. You may be planning to show a little flesh on your special day, but you probably won't want your mother or mother-in-law to be showing too much flesh, particularly if they are a little on the heavy side. Lumps and bumps should be carefully hidden, and clothes should fit properly. An older woman in a dress that is way too tight never looks good, and you don't want to look back at your wedding photos and feel embarrassed. At the same time, this doesn't mean that either lady needs to look dowdy. Something long and slinky is fine, so long as it isn't obscenely tight. The key is to choose something that suits and that looks sophisticated, unless you have a fun theme that doesn't lend itself to the sophisticated look. Wedding theme. The theme of the wedding should be considered. If there is a color theme, such as red, white, and blue, that will obviously affect the choice of outfit. If there's a cowboy theme, something a little ranchy may be in order, but only if you approve. For a beach wedding, a long, floaty summer dress can look very smart, but still fit in with the theme. Wedding gown. You have chosen your wedding gown for a reason. You want to stand out head and shoulders above everyone else. You don't want your mother or anyone else to choose a dress that looks remotely similar. Be very clear about that. Chain store, designer, or tailor-made. Where your mothers go to buy their outfit is really up to them. There is no need to look farther afield than a chain store if they don't have the money. They may, however, want to make it known what they have chosen to wear just in case there's a risk of someone else wearing the same outfit. The chain store option may also limit them when it comes to color. If they decide to go the designer route, it is worth looking online once they have found an outfit that suits and have tried it on. It may well be available for a lower price. It is also worth looking into hiring a designer suit, which may be very cost-effective. Tailor-made is ideal if it is affordable. If a friend or family member can help out with this, all the better. Accessories for the mother of the bride and mother of the groom. Accessories should generally be kept as subtle as possible because the outfit should be the center of attention. Wedding hat or fascinator. There aren't many occasions when hats are considered necessary these days, but weddings are one such occasion. A beautiful hat, provided that it matches, or at least blends with the outfit, can add an elegant finishing touch, particularly if other female guests are likely to wear hats. In that case, it is worth bearing in mind that the guests are expected to keep their hats on until the mother of the bride removes hers. However, hats have the disadvantage of squashing the hair and can sometimes get in the way of wedding photos if too large. If a hat isn't suitable, a fascinator can be just as classy. Fascinators have the added advantage of being cooler in hot weather and are cheaper. They are usually fixed to the hair by means of a comb, clip, or hairband. Jewelry. Plain jewelry is the best way to go. It is worth checking what color jewelry that you are wearing. For example, if you are wearing platinum, you may want the mothers to wear the same. Then again, you may prefer they opt for something completely different. See what jewelry they already have. Something classic will be perfect. Shoes. Shoes should generally be high-heeled, although not too high. Strappy sandals in a metallic color, or a color to match the dress, are perfect for a summer wedding, whereas smart dress shoes will be needed for a winter wedding. For a traditional wedding, it is probably best to avoid anything too flamboyant. Purse. Clutch purses are perfect to finish off the look and come in a wide range of styles. If possible, they should match the shoes, but at the very least, they should blend with them. If opting for purses with a strap, take care that they don't drag down the outfit for the photographs. Something small, just large enough to keep a lipstick and, if really necessary, a mobile phone, is all that is needed. The mother should leave supplies of baby wipes for the grandchildren to the parents. The mother of the bride and the mother of the groom obviously have an important role in the wedding and should dress to fit that role. The key things to ensure are that they don't detract from or clash with the bridal gown, and that they fit in with the overall theme of the wedding. Chapter 12. How to choose the perfect wedding rings. One major purchase in the run-up to the wedding is the wedding rings. The problem is that there are so many to choose from. To save some time, it is worth having a good idea of what you want before you even start looking. That will help the shop assistant to bring out the right rings to choose from. You should start looking as soon as you can so that you don't have to rush into buying a ring you later decide you don't like. After all, you will hopefully be wearing it for the rest of your life. Budget. There is no point in looking for a wedding ring until you know how much money you have to spend. Wedding rings can range from a few $100s to a few thousand or more. Ryan Reynolds spent a massive $2 million on Blake Lively's wedding ring. But it is unlikely you will have anything like as much as that to spend. Of course, you will be wearing the rings for the rest of your life, but as long as they look good and you are happy with them, that is the main thing. Consider, too, if you want a plain metal ring, or if you want diamonds or other gems. Diamonds can obviously add a lot to the price, and if you already have a gemstone engagement ring, you may be better off with a plain wedding band. One great way of saving money on wedding bands is to use a family heirloom in place of a brand new wedding ring. This will obviously depend on availability, but it will also depend on style. Something that looked fantastic on the finger of your great-grandmother on her wedding day may not be suitable for your wedding day, especially if you have a modern theme. Another budget-busting idea is to buy your wedding ring online. It is not as inadvisable as it sounds. Many online sites will provide you with a ring sizer before sending your ring to ensure that you get the right size in the first place. And, of course, if you receive the ring and hate it, you can get a refund, provided you return the ring within a certain time frame. His and hers. Another thing to consider is if you want rings for both of you. It is becoming more and more common for both the bride and groom to have wedding rings, but you don't necessarily have to follow through if you don't want to. Some men simply don't like wearing rings, or they may have an occupation that means rings will constantly have to be taken off. This is an issue for you, as a couple, to work through. Bear in mind that it will be much cheaper to just have one ring. However, you may want your future spouse to wear a ring to show that he is committed to you. Many couples opt for matching wedding rings. There is no doubt that matching wedding rings can look classy. Again, though, that depends on you. If your ring has diamonds in it, for example, your partner may prefer to opt for something plainer. Don't rule out wearing non-matching rings until you have seen what rings are available. Color of the metal. Once the budget and the his and hers issue has been resolved, it is time to start thinking about the color of the metal. Of course, this may depend on your engagement rings. If you've opted for engagement rings in platinum, choosing wedding rings in yellow gold may not be appropriate. Otherwise, you have the choice of these colors. Yellow gold. Traditionally, yellow gold is the metal of choice for wedding rings. But nowadays, with other metals becoming popular, you aren't necessarily restricted to yellow gold. If you do want yellow gold, bear in mind that 24-karat gold is considered to be too soft to wear for everyday use, and many wedding ring vendors won't have wedding bands made of 24-karat gold. You are therefore left with three choices: 18-karat, 14-karat, and 10-karat. 18-karat gold is obviously the most expensive because it has the highest gold content, but it is still hard enough to be appropriate for everyday wear. It is sometimes combined with platinum for a two-tone look. 14-karat gold is generally considered to be the most appropriate type for wedding bands because it is hard enough to last and doesn't tarnish easily. It is lighter in color than 18-karat gold, but is still yellow enough for those wanting yellow gold to be satisfied. 10-karat gold has less than 50% gold. It is predominantly made up of alloys. It is a pale yellow in color and is likely to tarnish over time. However, for those on a budget, it may be the most sensible option. For those who are concerned with it being considered cheap, if necessary, it could be replaced later on when more money is available. White gold. Many people confuse white gold and platinum, but they are not the same. White gold is not really a white metal. It has a yellow tinge to it. Basically, white gold is made from yellow gold and is mixed with different alloys. It is generally standard to plate white gold jewelry with rhodium, which is a white metal. It is very hard and will protect the white gold from scratches and tarnishing. Rhodium may wear off with time, but it is a relatively simple process to replate the bands as necessary. Rose gold. Another shade of gold to consider is rose gold. This is yellow gold mixed with copper to give the rosy pink color. The lower the carat, the pinker the ring. This is a particularly good choice if you are planning a traditional wedding and want a slightly vintage feel. Platinum. Platinum wedding bands have become increasingly popular over the past couple of decades and are considered to have a very modern feel. Platinum is white in color and incredibly tough, which may be important if something that lasts is important to you. Unfortunately, platinum is rarer than gold, and for that reason, is more expensive. Other modern metals. If your budget won't stretch to platinum, but you love the color, you could consider palladium. Alternatively, look at wedding bands made from titanium, zirconium, or even tungsten carbide. They may not sound quite as romantic as gold or platinum, but are budget-friendly and hard-wearing. Style. Wedding bands are usually plainer than engagement rings, and you will want to ensure that they complement your wedding ring, sitting well together. However, you still have a number of options to consider when it comes to the style. If you have an engagement ring with a large gemstone, you may want to think about a curved or fitted wedding ring. This could be a delicate curve, or it could be something with a pronounced Z shape. You can even buy rings that have a small section cut out to allow space for your engagement ring. If going for straight wedding bands, you need to decide on the profile. Some rings are completely flat against the finger. Others are rounded on the inside and out, and still more are rounded on the outside, while the inside is flat against the finger. Size. Sizing is obviously important. If your ring is too loose, you are in danger of losing it. If it is too tight, it will be uncomfortable, and you may need to get it adjusted a few years down the line. Paper ring sizers that you can download and print off are available online, but you should be careful when using these. They are often inaccurate. If you are trying rings on in a shop, there won't be an issue. But if you are opting for buying online, get the website to send you plastic ring sizers, which tend to be much more reliable. Bear in mind that you should try on the wedding bands or the ring sizers for more than just a few minutes. You will need to get used to the feel of the ring on your finger and see what happens when you flex and relax your fingers. Remember, too, that your fingers will change in size during the day, depending on what you are doing and the temperature. When it comes to taking your wedding ring off, don't worry if it resists when going over your knuckle. It shouldn't need a great deal of effort to take off, but nor should it slide off too easily. Comfort. A final consideration is comfort. You will be wearing your wedding rings all the time. So if they catch, or you feel that your fingers are restricted by wedding rings that are too wide, you need to find out sooner rather than later. This could particularly be a factor for the groom, who may not be used to wearing rings. Plain bands rather than diamond-set wedding rings may be more appropriate. Take your time when it comes to choosing and buying your wedding rings. Don't be tempted to rush into buying something that you aren't going to be happy with later, just because you want to tick another task off your to-do list. Chapter 13. Planning the wedding ceremony site. Wedding decorations. How you decorate the wedding ceremony site really depends on where it is. If it is at a church or a private venue, you may be limited as to how much decorating you're allowed to do. Then again, if your wedding ceremony is being held in your back garden or somewhere else over which you have much more control, you can more or less do what you want. At the same time, you don't want to go too overboard. The focus should be on you and your future spouse rather than the amazing decorations. Church wedding. If you are getting married in a church, you will need to discuss your plans with church officials. They may have very strict rules on what you can and can't do. You may, for example, not be able to pin or stick ribbons or other decorations onto the pews or altars. Once you know what the limitations are, you can start to plan how to make the church look as beautiful as possible. Flowers. You will almost certainly want flowers at your wedding. You may be in luck if you are getting married around Christmas, Easter, or some other religious ceremony, because the church may already be full of flowers and greenery. This can save a lot of money. However, you will want to have an idea of the color scheme in plenty of time in case it clashes with your wedding color scheme. If that is the case, discuss removing a few of the floral displays just for the course of the wedding and just leaving those that fit in. You can then add a few of your own to complement your theme. If, however, you are happy with the flowers that are already there, you may not need to add much at all. Perhaps consider some floral displays in your color scheme to be added around the altar, which is where most of the focus will be. You could also make up some tiny posies to affix on the edge of the pews, provided that this is allowed. These should match, or at least complement, the corsages that your guests are wearing. At the very least, you should be able to tie colored ribbons to the edges of the pews. While considering the flowers for the wedding venue, you should also take the time to think about your wedding bouquet and any corsages that your guests will be wearing. The more closely they match the color scheme of the flowers that you are planning to have in the church, the better. This is a good time to get in touch with a florist, to start ironing out what you do and don't want, and to look at the options she suggests would suit you. Candles. Candles may not be allowed in older churches because of the fire hazard. But if they are, they can add a romantic feel, as well as some light. This is particularly a good option for a winter wedding. Where you place them will need to be carefully thought out, however. For example, you won't want to put candles along the aisle if you are wearing a long train and are likely to knock them over. Ideally, the candles should be enclosed in glass or something else protective. Children may be running around, and the last thing you need is for property to be damaged or someone to be hurt. Potted plants. A quick and easy way to decorate a church is with potted plants. They can be quickly moved in and out and can look very effective, particularly if you choose flowering plants with splashes of your wedding colors. You could save a lot of money if you grow them yourself, although you will need to have a certain amount of gardening knowledge to do so. Potted plants can look great outside the church door too, and can provide a lovely backdrop for photographs. Tulle. If you are allowed to decorate the pews or seating area, tulle can be very effective when draped along the back of the chairs, perhaps decorated with tiny rosebuds or crystals. Just make sure it is carefully fixed so that guests don't catch it every time they stand up or sit down. Wedding guest book table. Once the wedding is over, the bride and groom will need to sign the marriage license with 2 witnesses present. A table should be set aside, often in a private room or alcove, to do so. As photographs are likely to be taken at this point, it will be a nice touch to ensure that the table is decorated. It doesn't need to be anything fancy, just a tablecloth with a candelabra and small floral display will suffice. A standing floral display behind the table will show up beautifully in photographs. Indoor wedding ceremony site. Like a church wedding, how you decorate an indoor wedding ceremony site will depend on the rules of the local officials. You may not need to do very much at all, unless, of course, it is in your own home, or in a marquee in the back garden. However, there are still a few things to consider, excluding what has already been mentioned above. Start doing your research by perusing wedding magazines and the internet for ideas as soon as your wedding venue has been booked. Focal point. There will need to be some kind of focal point before which you say your vows. This may simply be a table or a raised platform. Whereas a church altar is likely to be decorated anyway, you may need to consider how to decorate this focal point. Draped material, probably tulle, can look beautiful and can be draped over the edges of the platform or table and possibly even from the ceiling above the focal point down to either side of it. Flowers are almost certainly going to be needed, unless you are going for a very modern wedding. Whereas a church has a lot of raised areas, such as the pulpit and font, upon which floral displays can be placed, you probably won't have these in a private venue. See if the venue can lend you tall iron plant pot holders on which to place draping floral displays to give some decorative interest at eye level. Alternatively, if possible, see if floral displays can be hung from the ceilings. If you're trying to avoid or minimize fresh flowers, think of ways that you can decorate the venue with paper, fabric, or other craft materials. If you know someone who knits, for example, get them to knit flowers or other objects and display them around the room. Chairs. You will almost certainly be able to decorate chairs in a private venue to your heart's content. If you don't like the color of the chairs, cover them in fabric to match your theme. Keep it simple, though. You will only be at the wedding ceremony venue for an hour or so you want to save your decorating skills for the reception. Aisle. You may be limited in how much you can decorate a church aisle, but you can probably do a lot more with an aisle in a private location. You could put down an aisle runner to lead you to your spouse. Think table runner, but much longer. You could scatter the aisle with petals or confetti. Just bear in mind that long dresses and trains may drag the petals along with you. You could also tie ribbons to the corner chairs so that you have a path to follow as you walk down the aisle, or place candles at both edges of the aisle to light your way. Outdoor ceremony site. If your wedding is an outdoors one, you will probably have a lot more options to consider, but don't go too over the top. Simple and sophisticated is the way to go. Even an informal wedding can look stunning if you put some thought into it. Gazebo or arch. The focal point before or under which the marriage ceremony will take place is usually a gazebo or arch. This may be made of fabric, wood, or even metal, and should be decorated to match the wedding theme. It can be covered or entwined with fabric, flowers, ribbon, bows, or anything else that you can think of. Don't go too mad with colors, though. You'll be much better off sticking with white or cream, possibly with one other color to complement the bridesmaids' dresses. Backdrop. You may not need to think about the backdrop, especially if the wedding is taking place by the beach or some other beautiful view. However, if there isn't a great view, you will want something behind the gazebo or arch. A display of potted trees hung with fairy lights or other decorations could work very well. Chairs and aisle. You should be able to decorate the chairs and aisle just as you would with an indoor venue. However, there are other options. For example, if the wedding is at a beach, you might want to edge the aisle with shells or colored stones, or make necklaces of shells to loop along the backs of the chairs. Bear in mind that if it is windy, You will need something heavy that isn't going to blow away, or that can be stuck down. Candles are only likely to be suitable if it is an evening wedding. When decorating the wedding ceremony venue, keep it as simple as possible. You'll want to save most of your wedding decoration ideas for the wedding reception, where people could be spending a few hours. However, you still need to put aside the time to organize the decorations so that the venue looks perfect on your big day. Chapter 14. Planning the wedding ceremony, readings, and music. When it comes to planning the entertainment for your wedding, you will probably be thinking about the band or act for the reception. However, you will also need to consider the readings and music for the wedding ceremony. This will depend very much on whether you are having a church wedding or have chosen a secular ceremony. If you choose carefully, this is a great way of making your wedding special without having to spend a great deal of money. Music for walking down the aisle. The primary piece of music you will need to choose is that which will accompany you as a bride while walking down the aisle. Your choice will depend on whether you are in a church or are having a less formal wedding. Wedding marches. The most traditional piece of music for walking down the aisle is the Bridal Chorus by Wagner, which is more commonly known as Here Comes the Bride. Played on the organ, the opening bars of the music will be known to everyone, which means that your guests will know exactly when to stand without being told. This is best suited to church weddings, although if you want to use the music in a non-religious ceremony, there is nothing to stop you. However, there are other options that you can choose and can discuss with church officials. Another common choice for when you are walking out of the church is the Wedding March by Felix Mendelssohn. Again, nearly everyone will be familiar with this piece of music, also played on the organ, which will alert them to the fact that the wedding ceremony is nearly over. Classical music. If you don't want to go down the traditional route, you can choose anything that you like. However, in a church, most brides would opt for a piece of classical music. The Pachelbel canon is a common choice. Although usually played by a quartet, it can be played on the guitar if you want a slightly more modern slant to it. The Arrival of the Queen of Sheba by Handel is another option. This may be most suited to walking down the aisle to meet your future spouse, but there is nothing to stop you to walking out of the church to this music. Alternatively, if there is a piece of music that you particularly love and that you think will fit with the ceremony, that may be most appropriate to you. Modern music. For a more modern feel, there's a whole host of songs that you can choose from for when you walk down the aisle. This may be most appropriate for a non-church wedding, but you could ask church officials for their opinion if there is a song you particularly want. You could even take a modern song and turn it into an instrumental if you think that would suit the occasion better. The songs that you choose must be special to you, but really any love song will do. John Legend's All of Me is a contemporary choice that would be beautiful for walking down the aisle. Other popular choices are Jeff Buckley's Hallelujah, U2's All I Want Is You, Adele's Make You Feel My Love, Christina Perri's 1,000 Years, and of course, Somewhere Over the Rainbow by either Israel Kamakawiwa-Ol or Ava Cassidy. Whether you decide to play the original music through speakers or ask a band to perform the song for you, you will want to check the acoustics of the wedding venue. Churches in particular can be very high-ceilinged, and you don't want the sound to be so distant that guests can't hear what is being played. Hymns. If you're having a non-religious ceremony, hymns may not be appropriate. But you will almost certainly want a hymn or two if you are getting married in a church. This is something to discuss with church officials, who will have a few choices for you. Stick to songs that you and your guests are likely to know. There is nothing worse than guests fumbling through the hymns on your special day because they don't know the music and the words are unfamiliar to them. Musical interludes. Whether you're in a church or not, you may want a couple of musical interludes, especially when people are waiting for the bride to arrive. The latter should be background music, because too much else will be going on while guests are arriving. If you do have a session of music during the ceremony, choose something that suits the occasion and theme of your wedding. How to choose the band or artist. If you are getting married in a church, there may be a choir or a local group of singers or performers whose services you can use. If not for free, then for a nominal fee. If you are getting married elsewhere, you may need to hire a band or artist. A cheaper way of doing this is to see if you or your spouse has a friend or family member who could perform for free. This has the added advantage of making the ceremony a lot more personal, and you'll certainly enjoy the wedding photos and video a lot more. Bride and groom readings. Whether you're having a traditional wedding or not, you and your spouse may want to give a reading to one another as part of the ceremony. What you choose must be personal to you, and you must be able to read it with feeling. It is probably advisable to discuss it with one another in advance, unless you decide that you want to surprise each other. If you are both religious, then you will probably want to choose a Bible reading, in which case church officials will be able to give you some ideas of the most suitable readings. However, you could also choose to read something that you've written yourself, or you could choose a poem or piece of writing written by someone else. As long as it means something to you, that is all that matters. Just make sure you practice in advance. You don't want to become so emotional that you can't get the words out. How to choose who to give the readings. Deciding who to ask to give the other readings during the ceremony will really depend on whom you want to honor and who will read well. If you have a close friend who is painfully shy, you might not want to choose her. If she stammers her way through the reading, it will be embarrassing for her and for the other guests too. Pick people who are confident enough to be able to carry it off. Once you've decided who to ask and they have accepted, decide what it is you want them to read. This should be done according to their personality. If you have a very serious friend, a humorous reading is probably not going to work well. The same goes for giving a serious piece to a friend who is usually seen as a clown. You could ask the readers to choose their own readings. This really depends on whether you trust them to choose something appropriate and that shares your values. You will also need to give them guidelines on length. You want something long enough to give your guests something to listen to, but not so long that they begin to get bored. How many readings to choose? How many readings you choose really depends on how long the whole ceremony is. If it is a church wedding, you may be time limited, especially if you need to get out of the church in plenty of time to take photos before the next wedding party arrives. Usually, 2 readings will be perfectly adequate. However, if you have one long reading you would like to hear, or 3 short ones, that's also fine. Of course, if your wedding is in your back garden, you can have as many readings as you like. Just bear in mind that you want your guests to enjoy themselves, not start looking at their watches and wondering when the ceremony is going to end. The readings and music during the wedding ceremony may not seem to be the most important part of planning your wedding. but they can make it extra special if you make the right choices. Start thinking about what you want in plenty of time, and don't leave it until the last minute. Chapter 15. Planning the Wedding Reception. Theme, Layout, and Seating. A large chunk of your wedding budget, probably as much as 50%, will be spent on the wedding reception. And it goes without saying that an equally large chunk of time will be spent on planning it. Once you have decided on your venue and have put down a deposit, it is time to start planning the reception. If you're lucky enough to have a wedding planner, he or she will do the majority of the work for you. But you are more likely to have to do the planning yourself, in conjunction with the staff at your venue of choice. The first things to consider are the theme, the layout of the room, and the seating. The theme. You should already have an idea of your theme from your wedding overall. Now it is time to work out how the reception will fit into that. Some of the most common themes include elegant and traditional. When doing your wedding research, you will find the most information online about an elegant and traditional wedding reception. So, if this is what you are planning, you are in luck. You can simply take these ideas and add in your own color scheme. This is likely to involve white tablecloths, floral centerpieces, and, if possible, candelabras. This may also work out to be the most cost-effective theme, because everything that you need will be readily available, so you can shop around and decide on the cheapest versions of everything. Rustic. A rustic theme for your wedding reception would work out really well if you are having an outdoors wedding reception. You'll need, of course, to be sure that the weather is going to be good, unless you factor in a marquee for shelter just in case. A rustic theme simply means taking nature as your inspiration. This may be ideal for you if you are eco-friendly and on a budget, because you can make a lot of the decorations yourself. Centerpieces, for example, could be jam jars of wildflowers, and the menu could simply be written on a blackboard. There are plenty of ideas on sites such as Pinterest, Tumblr, and Etsy. Modern. With a modern wedding reception, you are less limited to certain conventions than at a more traditional wedding reception. Your tablecloths could be in any color that you want, and your centerpieces can be designed to look like a modern work of art. You can really let your imagination run wild with this theme. However, you do run the risk of it seeming dated when you look back at your wedding photos in years to come. Vintage. A vintage wedding reception is a great idea because it will never date. Ideally, you should choose a particular period of history because it may seem too mixed up otherwise. World War II is one option, or the swinging 20s. However, vintage weddings can be expensive because you may not be able to lay your hands on the necessary decorations easily. You'll also want to consider your guests. If they don't have much money either, they may find it difficult to find appropriate clothing. Fun. A fun theme can be very memorable. If, for example, you and your future spouse are Star Wars fans, you could dress your wedding reception room largely in black and white and have Star Wars objects as the centerpieces. However, this may be very restricting for your guests, who may not be sure exactly what they should wear. It may also be expensive. Something broader, such as a beach or golf wedding theme, may be more inclusive. It all depends what you and your spouse want and how many guests you're planning to have. The layout. You will need to get to grips with the layout of the reception space that you have. If your reception is indoors, this may be easy because you are restricted to the layout of the room. However, if you are having a wedding outdoors or are hiring a marquee, you have a little more leeway. Speak to the event organizers about the way the space is usually used. For example, is there room for a dance floor and a platform for the performers without compromising the seating plan? If you want some other form of entertainment, such as games, is there room for that? Once you have an idea of the layout and how everything is going to fit in, you will be ready to start planning how you are going to seat everyone. The seating. Whether you are planning a buffet to feed your guests or a sit-down service, you will still need to ensure that there is enough space to seat everyone. It is typical for the bride and groom and the rest of the immediate wedding party to sit at one long rectangular table called the head table. However, you could opt for a round table if you think that will look better. The other guests will usually sit at a series of round tables. However, a recent trend is to opt for family-style seating, which means that guests not sat at the top table are sat at long tables, usually at right angles to the head table. There are a number of advantages to family-style seating. If your wedding is relatively small, it can make the reception very intimate, and, of course, you won't need as much linen, which will cut down on costs. If your reception space is long and thin, this may be the best use of space. You can also get great photos because you will be able to fit in the majority of your guests into a single photograph. However, it can limit conversation because people will only be able to speak to those next to or opposite them. It may also mean that you have to have the meals served because it will be difficult to organize everyone getting up to get their food. The more traditional approach of having one long table for the main wedding party and round tables for the rest of the guests may be better for larger weddings. Most venues have at least 2 sizes of round tables. So if you don't want to opt for the more traditional size of 10 to 12 per person, you can choose a smaller table. It also means that if a couple of guests don't turn up, it won't really affect the seating arrangements. 8 or 9 people on a round table for 10 will still work very well. Round tables also allow for plenty of space around the tables for the guests to mingle. If you are offering a buffet meal, you can ask tables to go up one at a time, which is much easier to manage. The disadvantage of this form of seating plan is that round tables do take up a lot of room. So, if space is a premium, it may not work well. Centerpieces will also need to be considered carefully, because if they are too large, they will cut the table in two, meaning that the conversation flow is blocked. For a more contemporary feel, and provided that your venue can provide them, square tables may be an option. You may, however, find that this means extra expense because the venue has to get the tables in specially, and then provide the appropriate linen. Also, if guests don't turn up, it can leave a gap at the table. Finally, you will need to consider that square tables usually seat either 8 or 12, which can be an awkward number. You don't want to have the final table with just 4 or 5 people on it. It will look awkward in the photographs, and your guests may feel that they have been left out. Finally, you could opt for a cocktail reception with snacks rather than food. This could work well if you only have a small space to play with. For example, your backyard. Your guests will be standing for most of the time, so you would only need to provide a few chairs. Comfortable seating is an option. If indoors, Sofas are ideal. If outdoors, then garden furniture will be fine. However, you should bear in mind that a cocktail reception may not last as long as a reception with food. So it really depends on how long you want your guests to stay. Once you have decided on your layout of choice, ask the venue coordinator to draw up a plan for you to take home. Then, when it comes to seating guests, you will have a much better feel of who should go where. You will, of course, want to ensure that your guests are sitting with people that they know, and that if there are any guests who are unlikely to be civil to one another, you seat them as far apart as possible.
If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe to support this channel. Thank you.